Welcome to Election Watch 2015. I'm your host, Teresa Wippel. Today in the studio we have Gary Noble, who is running for re-election to position 3 on the Edmonds School District Board of Directors. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
Could you talk a little bit about why you are running for re-election and your background on the school board?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I moved to this area in 1979 and soon had kids, and when my daughter first got into kindergarten, I found out that education was something that was pretty interesting that I'd never really dealt with before. And I started volunteering in her classroom and kept doing that. In middle school, I did math tutoring. And when my kids got in high school, I became part of Lynnwood High School's instructional council, which is their council that does the major decisions for the school, like deciding whether they want to do block periods or things of that sort. And while I was on their instructional council, I got an opportunity to be on the Citizens Planning Committee, or CPC, which is a district committee of parents, one parent from each school. And they help the district primarily with long-range planning issues. I was on the facilities committee, so I learned a lot about how the district plans its facilities, figures out its boundaries, how many kids are going to be in each school, and all kinds of capacity issues within the school district. So I was on that for quite a while, and then the board representative from my district decided not to run again, and so I had been interested in schools and the district, so I decided to run for school board, and I made it. And it's been very, very satisfying since then. I've enjoyed being on it. Been a lot of difficult things. It was particularly difficult during the recession when we were cutting budgets very drastically. But overall, it's been a very, very satisfying job, and I've enjoyed being on the school board.
Okay, good. Well, in your time on the board, what are the 3 accomplishments that you're the most proud of since you've been on the school board?
Well, I guess one of them would be getting through the recession with balanced budgets every single year and successfully getting through the recession and keeping the educational system in our district running well. I'm very proud of the fact that our students do better than state averages in testing and graduation rates. And I'm very proud that I'm actually proud of our community. It's not proud of myself. I'm proud of our community because our community has been a super support to us and recently passed bonds for us so we could build a new Lynnwood High School, build a new Meadowdale Middle School, and right now we're in the process of building a new Alderwood Middle School and a new Lyndale Elementary. So, thank you.
Okay. And what are the top 3 challenges that you've had to face in your time there?
Wow, lots of challenges. Again, the worst one was the recession. Mm-hmm. We had to cut programs very drastically. I can remember when we first started cutting programs, I thought the fact that we cut driver ed in the high school was a tragedy. Yeah. And later we had to cut almost all our after-school programs, all our tutoring programs, so much really, really valuable things we had to cut. So that's all the things associated with the recession cutting were just all come together as a really, really difficult situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the issues that seems to be getting a lot of, at least press these days, nationally and locally to an extent, is the Common Core state standards. And for those who may not have followed that, those are, of course, national K-12 standards that emphasize career and college readiness for students. And in some places they have, as I said, generated controversy. And how is it going so far in the Edmonds district? You began introducing them in the classrooms this year, right?
Right. We've been using them actually for 3 or 4 years in getting them installed and getting curriculum that matches the new standards. But the standards has not probably been as difficult for our district, or in actuality for many districts in the state, than has been for many other states. States like Washington and Massachusetts already had very, very high standards for their students. We had our essential learning requirements, ELERs we call them. And although the Common Core are different, they're similar in difficulty. We already had, for instance, things like having students be able to explain their work, which is in a multiple choice test you can't do, and many states just use multiple choice tests for their standardized tests. So we were already on the way of a lot of things the Common Core standards emphasize. Now there's a lot of controversy over the Common Core standards, but every school district, every state has to have some standards of what students should learn in each grade. And the Common Core standards were basically worked backwards from college readiness, what you need to do as a senior year to be college ready, what you need to do in your junior year to get to your senior year, and working all the way back to kindergarten. And they emphasized a lot of collaborative skills, understanding skills, and communication skills that sometimes in other places weren't taught so well, but we were already working on that sort of thing in the state of Washington. So it's been not as difficult a transition as some states have had, but talk to any teachers, and it has not been easy either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked with some teachers who just talked about the amount of work that's in the administrators too that have been involved in just getting ready for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that whole kind of phrase, standardized testing, that can be such a hot button issue for some people, where they hear that term and they think that's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that it's somehow trying to put their child into a box or
Right.
whatever. Do you have a response for that kind of concern?
I'm not a real proponent of standardized testing, particularly the vast quantity we have now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good thing to have a standardized test for students once in a while, maybe once or twice through their educational career, because it kind of sets a benchmark for them and does a fair comparison across other districts, and now with the Smarter Balance Assessment actually across different states. But having a test every year in literacy and in math from 3rd grade through 8th grade, and then science tests, and now we've ended course tests in high school, it is vastly, vastly too much. And the other problem that has come up with standardized testing that they really weren't designed for. They were designed for an occasional assessment of a student, how they're doing, and also to see how they're doing compared to other students in their state or across. And now assessments are being used to rate schools, they're being used to punish schools, they're being used to punish parents, actually, and school districts. For instance, if the test scores are too low, we have to offer the parents the opportunity to go to other schools, or for off-site tutoring that is not controlled by the school district. So lots of things that are linked to standardized tests, which really the idea of standardized testing was never designed for that. So it makes it difficult. And of course, now teacher evaluations they want them to be linked to it. They're not linked to it in our state, but the politicians certainly want that to happen.
Right, right. So it sounds like there's a lot of that that's kind of out of your control in terms of the requirements that are being imposed.
That is very true. That's very, very true.
Yeah.
We have to do what we're told to do,
right.
whether we agree with it or not.
Right,
That's correct.
right. And a lot of times tied to funding, right, that you don't get if you don't comply. Yeah, that's a tough position to be in. You know, one of the things that I've heard from parents from time to time about is that the school district offers full-day kindergarten via the lottery system, and it's free of charge for students enrolled in some schools, but not all. And there's some districts in the Puget Sound area, I believe, that do offer free full-day kindergarten to all. Is that something that the district is thinking about considering at some point along the way?
We have looked at that, but right now, the full-day kindergarten, we found it to be very, very beneficial, and it is offered in over half our schools for free. And it's the schools that it's offered for free is based upon state funding.
Right.
The state does not fund full-day kindergarten in all our schools. It only funds it in some schools. And in schools that it's not funded in, we offer it as a paid option. And those are the schools that have the least free and reduced lunch students. So that's how the state bases their funding. But by 2018, according to the court decision, all schools will have full-day kindergarten. So the choice was whether to spend money now in 2015, 3 years early, to fund full-day kindergarten for another 10 schools, or wait for it to phase in 2018. And we decided to wait for it to phase in because putting it in altogether presents a lot of difficulties. I mean, there's certainly the cost issue. So if the cost issue is very significant, we can use that money to reduce class sizes in other grades rather than offering all full-day kindergarten. There's another issue, just the ramp-up issue, purchasing teaching materials for that many new kindergartens, having enough classrooms for that many new kindergartens. We, as of next fall, we'll have put in, I believe, 37 relocatable classrooms around the district, and that is primarily because of full-day kindergarten, because you can put 2 kindergartens in a single classroom for half-day, but those same 2 kindergartens require 2 classrooms for full-day. And so getting enough classrooms to do it. Matter of fact, the first year the state offered full-day kindergarten, Mukilteo had to refuse because they did not have the classrooms to put the students in. And so there are a lot of peripheral things that make it difficult. And we decided the best use of funding for those 3 years was to reduce class sizes rather than to implement it 3 years earlier than the state is going to pay for it.
Okay, so in 2018, everybody will get full-day kindergarten.
If the legislature complies with the McCleary court order.
Well, there's an if there.
There's an if there, that's true.
Yeah, okay. So the final question I have for you is, and you and I were talking earlier that maybe not everybody in the district that you represent, which is northeast part of the district, may not be as familiar with this, but it has been a hot button issue for the board to deal with as a whole, and that is the crumb rubber turf fields that have been installed, that are being installed, the ones in particular at the former Woodway High School in Edmonds, but students from throughout the district do go to the Edmonds Heights school that's there. And of course the controversy related to that, where there were some parents and community members who were concerned about some of health and safety issues related to the crumb rubber turf, and had asked the board, lobbied the board to consider a different option, and the board voted to stick with the crumb rubber. Can you talk about why you supported that decision, and if you have any thoughts about kind of where the board might go from here on that in the future with those fields?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Let me first of all kind of give the viewers that are not from Edmonds a little idea of what the issue was. We were replacing, this year, we replaced the turf at the Edmonds Woodway Stadium, main stadium, and we're putting in new turf fields at the old Woodway High School site. And the ones at the old Woodway High School site are being done in collaboration with money from the City of Edmonds and a large grant from Verdant and a small contribution from the school district. So it is not being primarily paid for by us. When the parents in the area of the Woodway High School found out about this and did some research, artificial turf, as is installed in Husky Stadium, the Seahawks field, and virtually every artificial turf field in our area, consists of plastic blades of grass and an infill of what they call crumb rubber, which is ground up tires. And the crumb rubber basically supports the plastic blades of grass and provides a very soft impact surface for students or athletes when they are playing on the field, and it becomes a surface that is very playable. The controversy is that crumb rubber is made out of ground up tires, and tires have known carcinogens in them. They have heavy metals in them and known carcinogens. And so a student playing on a crumb rubber field certainly has the possibility of ingesting crumb rubber, and from that he could be ingesting carcinogens or could be ingesting heavy metals or things that you just don't want inside your body. Now, crumb rubber fields have been the standard in our state for artificial turf fields since about 2002. So there are many, many. So all our students play on crumb rubber fields, and when they play opposing teams in other districts, they also play on crumb rubber fields. the proposal that was given to us is that there are alternatives. There were two major alternatives that we considered. One is Nike Grind. Nike Grind is basically made up of the scraps from Nike tennis shoe factories. They grind up the scraps and make it into a Crumb rubber that's like ground up tires, a very similar product. Nike guarantees that this Nike Grind does not have the carcinogens or the heavy metals that ground up tires have. Nike does not tell us what is in it because that is proprietary, but they will tell us it does not have the carcinogens and heavy metals of ground up tires. That is a product that is in very limited supply. Not all artificial turf field installers can even procure it. And it probably would never be enough Nike Grind to fill all the fields in the area. But it could be used on individual fields. The other option was, I believe it was called Eco Grind. I'm not sure the exact name of it, but it's a product that is organic. It's made out of ground up coconut shells and rice hulls and cork. And it has been used successfully, particularly in Italy, in a lot of places in Italy, and in a very, very limited number of installations in the United States. And we were concerned about being a leader in putting in somewhat unproven product in a field that is using public money to make that field. There have been some reports of problems with it, that it tends to clump, which makes it difficult to use. We know that it requires occasional watering because if it dries out, it blows away. But I don't think the watering would be a large issue in our climate, and it certainly would be possible to do that. But most of all, we were concerned with just using an untested product from our area. We contracted for a study. When we started hearing complaints and concerns about it, we contracted a specialist to do a study, and their study of the literature and all the testing, which is quite limited. There's been not a lot of testing on Crumb rubber or anything else, but the studies that have been done generally show that the levels of toxins from Crumb rubber is fairly equivalent to the level of toxins in the air around fields anyways, because the same sort of toxins come from ground up tires off of streets and other industrial things. Yes, we live in a society where the air is fairly polluted around it. And the tests of ingestion were rather inconclusive as to whether the Crumb rubber actually releases its chemicals into the body if it is ingested or it just passes through. So the studies we had did not show any significant test results or scientific test results that showed that the EcoFill or Nike Grind was better than Crumb rubber. There was but then most of the studies said they need more study on it. Mm-hmm. Then Verdant, who was the major contributor, also contracted an independent study to look at it, and their study also showed that the level of contamination from EcoGrind and Crumb rubber was virtually equal. And so based upon that, we decided to continue with Crumb rubber. But that doesn't mean we will do that forever. Right now, Crumb rubber is the standard in our state, and it's what our students play on. Even if we were to change our fields, our students would be playing on Crumb rubber every time they did a game at at another facility. But we have now, with the Woodway fields, we'll have, I believe, 8 turf fields, because we have them in the Meadowdale playfields and Meadowdale High School, at all our high schools in the Meadowdale playfields. So we have eight fields with Crumb rubber on them, which mean, and artificial turf field has to be renewed about every 10 years. Mm-hmm. So that means about every year and a half, we will have the opportunity to change to a different fill if another fill becomes the standard, or there are a lot of studies that show a different kind of fill has definite health advantages to our students, and we would be first in line to do that if there were studies that would show that. And so we pretty much were not aware this was an issue before this, truthfully. And now that we're aware of it, we will be looking at all the research virtually every year when we renew a turf field to see if it is still the correct decision to use Crumb rubber.
Okay, okay, that's great. Thank you. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you think is important to discuss in terms of issues that you've heard from parents that you think that have popped up as priorities in your board meetings in recent months?
It's a really good question. I guess what I would like to mostly say is that we've been very fortunate in our district to be able to renew our facilities. We have, I think, 33 schools, and if every school was to last 50 years before it got refurbished or rebuilt, we would still be rebuilding a school every year and a half.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Just to keep our schools less than 50 years old. And since I've been on the board, which has been 12 years, we've built Lynnwood High School and Meadowdale Middle School, 2 schools in 12 years. And so we're behind the 8 ball kind of in modernization, but we've had really excellent support from our community. And with the last bond, that we're going to be able to do Madrona and Lynnwood Elementary, Lyndale Elementary, Alderwood Middle School, and also do improvements to Lynnwood Elementary and Spruce. And that makes such a big difference to us that we can start modernizing our schools, because if some of the parents have been in our schools, some of them are definitely showing signs of wear. And the state does not provide us any money for rebuilding schools. They do a small amount of matching when we get a bond, but they basically don't pay for rebuilding schools. So we have to rely on our home community for modernization of the schools, and we're very, very appreciative of the community supporting us to do this. So it's great.
Okay, very good. And this is your opportunity now if you want to offer any kind of a wrap-up for voters when they're making their decisions about who to vote for, what you'd like to tell them. So feel free to do that if you'd like.
Well, thank you very much. I've been just very thankful that you have elected me to the school board this many times. One of the reasons I wanted to run again is I had so many years of cutting budgets. Now that we are actually getting the money back and restoring the systems, it becomes a real pleasure to restore our schools and restore our educational programs to the level they really should be. I'm quite proud of our accomplishments over the last several years. Our students' test scores are better than state averages. We've greatly improved our graduation rates. I think they're around 86% now that graduate on time in 4 years, and the state average is still in the 70s. I'm proud that we've had balanced budgets throughout the recession, and I'm very proud that we're able to rebuild our oldest schools. My priorities in the future, student achievement. I want to push student achievement as hard as I can, and to lower class sizes. Those are the really big things that I prioritize spending money on. The second priority is retaining and hiring excellent teachers and making sure that we have the funds available to provide professional development for the teachers, because the way the curriculum is changing and the pressure on student achievement, the teachers need professional development to keep up with the system. The third thing is I promise that we will continue our financial integrity. That's a very, very big thing to me, to make sure we have financial integrity and balanced budgets throughout. So again, I am thankful for everyone for electing me, and I hope you'll consider electing me again. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming by, and good luck in your campaign.
Why, thank you.